Thank you so much for joining us today. This is really exciting. We've been wanting to talk to you guys for several months, and it took a while to get the podcast room ready to go, but I think we're finally there. So thanks for joining.
It's nice and cozy in here, too.
Well, thank you. We wanted to talk about the News Tribune today. I feel that when I would read stories, I didn't know the people behind there, and a lot of times you don't know that there's someone behind there. You're not thinking about it. And now that I've gotten to know you guys, clearly I know most of you, and when I see a story by you, Kristine, I'm like, well, Kristine wrote another good one. And we'll get into grease traps another time. But today's just more about learning about your business and your day-to-day stuff and how you guys are, how you work with Tacoma and how you like co-working.
All right.
What does a day look like with the News Tribune?
Well, every day is different, is what we tell everyone. And it's different, by staffing and sort of, what you've got going on. I'm the editor of the News Tribune, but I've got 3 or 4 other editors that are sort of the main day-to-day line editors that are managing reporters. So my day's a lot of meetings and management, with corporate or management down. But we start our days every day with a whole staff meeting with all the reporters and visual journalists and editors talking about what they have going on. And then, from there, they go out and do all the reporting and writing and editing. And, we're a 24-hour news company, right? It never stops. So, we're publishing all day, every day. But same thing for, I'm sure, reporters too. But every day is a little bit different based off of whatever the news cycle is. But your day is more interesting than mine, Kristine.
Usually. I don't sit in nearly as many meetings.
No. So what is your day like?
Well, it pretty much starts out the same way. We have that group meeting. And then, for me personally, it kind of depends on the day. Sometimes that involves going out into the field to talk with people. As the food and restaurant reporter, that's often with restaurant owners. Sometimes today I was talking with a restaurant owner and made a couple of pit stops on my way home and over here to, test out the foods, if you will. And then also writing, reporting, phone calls, all of the above.
Do you guys ever take a break from the news, or are you always kind of checking in what's happening, like national news and stuff? Is it, or do you get a chance to kind of like let go? Like, what's that like being in the news industry?
It's awful. It's a lot. I write about food and I still feel like stressed out about being a journalist.
Yeah, I was at a corporate thing last week or the week before last, and we were in sort of back-to-back meetings for 2 days, and I didn't get a chance to sort of keep up with it. And I was like, man, I feel better not keeping up with. I mean, the news cycle right now is crazy from a national standpoint, right? But then, how that filters down into our local issues, too, is sort of obviously extremely relevant. But it's hard to sort of, sign off and not pay attention to it for sure.
Yeah. Are you guys finding the stories, or do the stories find you? How does a story come about?
Do you want me to
try
to take it? So I would say it's a good mix of both, but any reporter would tell you, especially if you've been through school or training, your job is to find stories. So that's a lot of, the day-to-day is, you can't show up and have nothing to do, because then what would be your purpose? So it's a little bit of both, and a lot of that comes kind of naturally just from sort of being in the world that you're tasked with being in. And then sometimes things do come our way. We have a tip line. Stephanie can maybe talk a little bit about that. I think for some people on staff, it's the bane of their existence, the emails that come in through the general news inbox, because it's never ending. But there's a lot of interesting, juicy stuff that people send in just via email, sometimes anonymously. Sometimes they just want to let you know this is happening, at the hospital or, in the school, places where we're not physically on a day-to-day basis. So it's a little bit of mix of both. And then, being a part of, I think, Facebook groups and next door groups, locally especially, that's where a lot of stories come from, is just kind of, I think, living in the community that you're reporting on is essential.
Do you have to have like a fact check too, like two sources or anything like that, like the movies say?
Oh,
or are you just like,
yes.
wait, what happened? Oh, I got this.
Well, sometimes, yes. I mean, sometimes things lead to nowhere. I mean, I've definitely had, even in my work, like had phone calls with people about things that it's just, I don't know if this is ever going to actually become a story. The daily question is it newsworthy?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of news tips into email. Usually somewhere around 200 to 300 emails a day. Not all of them
Just
are actual
tips?
news tips, but some
Really?
of them are. We get a lot of political emails, especially sort of in state ledge season right now, and campaign seasons too. But we get a good number of news tips and from this community, and whether they're straight to a reporter or just sort of the general news tip line. And I'd say about half of them actually have good info in it. I mean, just yesterday we got probably 2 or 3 tips about the protest downtown, and if we hadn't seen it or seen those tips, we wouldn't have probably known about it because that reporter, it was a holiday, was working from her house and didn't see that herself. But I think what Kristine said about, living here and just being part of the community and, seeing things for yourself. We get a lot of news tips just from our general curiosity of what's going on and sort of go from there.
Are there any aspects of your jobs that people on the outside would be like, oh, that's interesting, that's surprising, like I wouldn't have thought of that? Is there anything like any secrets in there that you guys don't share that we could, I don't know.
I think, when we expanded our editorial board to include some community members and we talked about our process with them, one of the things that they said that they didn't really realize was just how careful we are with details. And you were talking about, how do you confirm things?
Yeah.
We're checking sources, making sure that they're credible. If it's something that we can't really verify in a couple of other places, then we usually don't run with it. So, I mean, we have a lot of conversations about, how comfortable we are with whatever someone told us or didn't tell us. We have sort of that morning meeting, but then we have smaller group story planning meetings too, where we talk about a lot of those details of, do you have enough for that story yet or not? And generally, we're looking for. I know in like movies and TV shows, they're saying, all right, you got your 3 sources and this and that. But we are looking for a lot of verification on every detail and being able to say who told us what. And we very rarely at the local level ever do anonymous sources. You see that a lot in movies where they're, anonymous source, and you see it in TV news and politics and CNN, and you see it a lot of times, I think, even at the big papers of the Post and Times, and obviously extremely credible and dealing with, very sensitive information, but it has to rise to an extreme level for us to agree to publish an anonymous tip or information.
Kristine, how many stories do you have usually at a time that you're working on?
17,000.
Really?
No, I don't
That's
know.
a solid number.
It feels like never ending. I actively a handful, I guess, and then sometimes it's a matter of, a handful, and then beyond that, there's like a bucket full, and then it's a matter of sometimes just timing and waiting for people to give you the information that you need, whether it's timely that week or, in my case, for instance, like if it's a restaurant opening, maybe that's something that, it's relevant when it's opening, right? So there's timeliness that plays into that. And then just things kind of working out. And like Stephanie was saying, making sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's dotted, as they say.
Are there any types of stories that, obviously you're in the restaurant industry, the food and bev, are there any stories that you get where you're like, you get excited about more than others? Is there something like, wow, that's really cool?
I think places opening in areas that need the investment, I think is exciting. Like I mentioned, I also live here, so I have a vested interest myself in new things coming and vacant spaces being filled. So those kinds of things do get me excited. I think especially too if it's something that really feels unique or unusual to the area. Yeah, and then also if there's just a compelling story, and sometimes those compelling stories come from sad places, and sometimes they come from happy places.
What are some of the unique challenges that you guys face today?
The cycle, right? It never ends. There's obviously, a lot of stories out there, and only, we've got about 25 folks on staff. So there's a lot of stories that don't get told. I think one of the bigger concerns that we've had just more recently is, our industry has built up, large digital platforms, but we rely a lot on Google and search and social media to drive people to our websites, to drive people to our stories. And, Google changes their algorithm every week, it feels like. Facebook has devalued news in your social feeds if you're not interacting with those stories very often. X is X. So we've relied heavily on a lot of those what we call referral traffic to our stories that in the last 6 to 12 months, have not been as heavy drivers as they once were. We're also having, a lot of our content stolen by weird AI websites that pop up, overseas, and they're up, on a website for a month and then they're down, and there's no way to identify, who owns it, where they're coming from. There's no legislation that protects that work in that type of space too. So there's a lot of digital challenges that are sort of happening right now. But I think more on the local level, it, is just trying to, identify, the people that want to read the stories and find it valuable, and growing that audience to where, this is a sustainable business model as we move forward. We've been here in some capacity for almost 150 years, and I feel like it's our jobs to make sure that it's here for another 150 years in whatever form that looks like.
What's the impact of AI? I will say every time I'm like struggling on something, man, could you rewrite this? It's better every time. It always writes better than me. And it pisses me off. I don't like it. I really don't like it. I love it, but I don't like it. But how does it impact?
There's the good and the bad, right? There's the good part of it
is.
that, we can find ways in any type of employment for, how resourceful it could be for us, right? Can it keep our task list together after meetings? Can it organize maybe our stories in a way that, keeps us, sort of going down the line focused? Can we... we're talking about sort of like how can we set up alerts for ourselves for story tips and tricks, right, of what's happening out there to keep an eye on, maybe what competitors are doing or business licenses that are being filed, right? How do you use it really in that way, in a way to get more story ideas in front of our reporters, to use it, from a logistics standpoint of making our lives easier. But, there's the evil part of it, and that, some of those AI tools are stealing work. And when they're answering your questions about things, sometimes when they're answering your questions about things, they're stealing work and then creating inaccuracies, and they're reporting back to you. McClatchy's actually just filed a lawsuit last week as part of a larger news media alliance against an AI group that stealing content, and also when you ask it a question and it gives you the answer, it'll say, hey, the News Tribune reported this, and it will be inaccurate information.
Wow.
So, there's that part of it, right? That's not sourcing, and it's not keeping our work, copyrighted work, in the right form. But then there's also like these websites that I mentioned that's just totally stealing work, from headline to the last period. And we had an example, I think, last year where a source called one of my reporters and was like, hey, you've got the wrong photo. This isn't my work, this photo on this website. But it's got, his byline. It's the entire story. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's no way to contact that website. There's no way to get it taken down. 3 weeks later, it's gone. Poof, the website's, but the damage has been done to that source, but to also our ability to grow our readership and for people to see that we're the only ones that are writing those type of stories too. I was actually in D.C. in September talking to some of our congressional delegation about the need for them to work a little bit faster on some of those restrictions on AI and protection of our work, because what Google and social media did to newspaper work, even just 10 years ago, AI is going to be a lot worse if they don't put some regulations around it quicker.
You're going to have to tell those senators to start using AI to help with your AI.
Right? Gonna have to tell those senators to maybe just like retire and let somebody under the age of 40.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. We could go on and on.
I mean, I would take just under the age of 70.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So you guys are a major voice in Tacoma and around in the area. And how do you guys collaborate and partner with businesses?
I think there's more opportunity. It's something that I think over the last 10, 15 years or so, as the newspaper industry has changed a lot, we've sort of gone inward and don't have as many collaborations as we once did. But trying to encourage staff and our sort of newsroom as a whole to be a little bit more front-facing, and engaging in that physical sense too, and partnering with businesses is sort of a bigger initiative, I think, of ours last year and then leading into this year. I was telling him earlier that most of us are trained in print media. We're not totally comfortable in front of a camera or speaking engagements as much, but I think that's something that we've learned over the last couple of years, that to show people we live here, we're here, we're your neighbors, and we care. We care a lot about getting it right and telling the stories, and so trying to find more of those opportunities is important for us. We've got a group that's trying to identify some festivals and things, but also just smaller opportunities for us throughout the year for folks from our newsroom to just be involved with and just say that we're there. So I think that's something that, there's a lot of opportunity for us to build and be better at it.
I know a great local business networking group that you can get involved with.
To that point, I think when we opened, it's been a year now, was it February 18th? We opened, technically we started charging rent February 1st last year, and you guys were one of the first tenants that moved in, but people found us from the article that you guys wrote. And
I found you from the article.
There you go.
Because I think I had been gone for
that's right.
Holiday vacation or something, and I knew that we were looking to move. So as I was Googling it myself, and I found our article, and I was reading through it, and I was like, all right, that looks like a good option for us. So that's how I learned as well.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are here, because Kristine, we've had, oh my gosh, I don't know how many conversations we've had in the pantry that we've talked about things from all over the food and bev industry, grease trap, all those types of topics we've had. And I'm sorry that I corner you in the pantry.
No, it's okay.
You're you walk by like this now, like
no, not at all.
The pantry is a large space. It's not a closet, just FYI.
Oh yeah,
That's fair. That could sound kind of creepy.
Yeah, sorry.
And very good.
That's a good point. That's
very good
point.
Kirkland granola bars.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Those are my personal favorite.
Well, I think to that point is that I stop and talk to you guys about questions we're having, hey, we're thinking about doing something. Does this sound silly? Because you guys are experts in what you do, and it's amazing having you guys in the space and being able to bounce ideas off of you as partners in general. So I feel like there's so many different ways we've been able to work with you guys and different things we're doing, and that's been. That's why we do co-working, because of those types of things. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of nice, actually. Like Stephanie sort of mentioned, that there's an internalism, and there's been smarter people than I who have explained this in the media world. But as journalists, there's with the need to kind of do more and more and more, we've become sort of more and more tethered to our computers. But it's really hard to do journalism that way. And being in a newsroom with all of your newsroom people is one thing, but there's actually a little bit of a benefit, I would say, to being sort of embedded in a space where there's other people who are doing all sorts of things, right? I like awkwardly said hi to Kwabe, the Peace Bus guy, one day.
I was
And
just
he was like,
thinking
"Do
about
I
that."
know you?" And I was like, "No, but I know
think
you."
he gets that a lot.
I saw him down in one of your offices being interviewed by somebody.
Craig,
Craig.
yeah,
I
a few weeks ago. Yeah.
I just looked and I saw Quabi in the office. I go, good for you, Quabi, getting out there.
So you guys had mentioned that you heard about us from the article that you guys wrote. I'm curious about when the News Tribune kind of made that transition to flexible office from a traditional lease, and how you're liking it, and do you think the News Tribune will ever go back to a traditional lease, or do you see it sticking with the flexible office?
Yeah, so I moved here in June 2020, and I knew at the time we were in, that massive, I think it was like 140,000 square foot spot.
40,000 square
Well, it was a
feet.
press. We had a press there and stuff too.
Okay.
It was massive. But I knew then that it was either under contract or that they would be, selling it at some point soon. Was asked to look for a co-working space, which I had actually never heard of co-working space.
I didn't hear of it until I got this job
Before.
either.
And I was a little worried about that, knowing that we needed to get people back in the office, and it would be a fragmented sort of traditional newsroom sense. I can't have a scanner in the middle of a co-working space. How would that work? And it's been good for us to have that flexibility. There's been no, for the News Tribune employees, there's no sort of mandatory be in the office. But I think folks like having, the space and opportunity. We have dedicated meetings that are here too. So idea of co-working has been much better than I thought that it was when we first started doing it. Now, we're really blessed in that we've got, some dedicated office space. There's a lot of co-working places, I don't know, across Tacoma, but across the country that are just big, wide open spaces.
Like rent a desk for the day
desk
or
a bench, and that wouldn't work for us because we are having private conversations, we are having private meetings. And that ability to, bring source in and chat with them one-on-one if we need to. So we've got some specific needs when it comes to co-working, and this space really sort of, provides that for us.
Awesome. So it sounds like you're not going back to traditional lease anytime soon.
I don't think so.
Not in the next 10 months.
Right? Stuck with us
No,
for another.
I'm just kidding.
I don't think so. There's, never say never. But, prior to, the company as a whole changing over to like co-working space, office space was one of our biggest expenses. When you think of it from a national standpoint of 30 newsrooms and having 30 leases.
Well, real estate in general is usually a business's biggest expense or
Right.
biggest liability, one of the biggest liabilities
Yep.
because of that. So
Yeah, that business expense was enormous. It was right next to, our employees and the wire services that we pay for to have, available to us. So being able to downsize that in a way that still works for us across all of our newsrooms, has been really quite helpful.
Well, thank you guys very much for joining us today. This was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being a part of UrbanWork.
Yeah, thanks for having us.